Vanessa Tate, thumbs up to you, the journalist that works for the Daily Mail. Finally, a balanced article that calls things out like they are. Why this picture of sweet hippie child Lilibet, Princess Lilibet if you don't mind, with her bare feet and hair flowing free makes my heart break for George and the other lot. Maybe Meghan got it right after all. And the article is behind a paywall, as ever, I've read it, goes on to talk about what Princess Lilibet's life would be like if she was still in the UK, being forced into hastily arranged photo shoots, being told what to wear, when to go, who to see, what to say, and the diametric opposite, I love that word, the diametric opposite is the life that Lilibet, Harry, Meghan have got now. Their life is one of unbothered and freedom. And if you've seen my other video uploads and the news recently about the non-working taxpayer-funded royal family, they are spiralling towards doom. As the truth comes out, even royalists, even staunch royalist journalists can't defend the other side of the family. This is where it's at. Respect their lifestyle of freedom. In the California sun, they've got it right.
Well said, Martin Gold. You hit the nail on the head on this one. You know, something funny is happening when people who spent years saying Harry and Meghan had ruined their lives are suddenly looking around and going, wait a minute, are they actually doing okay? I mean, seriously, for years we were told the same story over and over again. They'd leave, they'd fail, they'd come crawling back, they'd regret everything. The clock was supposedly ticking, any day now, any minute now. The disaster was always just around the corner. Well, it's been years. At some point, that any minute now starts looking like a very long minute. And that's why this recent shift in media coverage is so interesting. Not because everyone suddenly became Harry and Meghan fans. That hasn't happened. But because some commentators are finally asking the question they avoided for years. What if Harry and Meghan actually made the right decision for themselves? Imagine that. A grown man deciding what's best for his wife and children. A family choosing the life they want. Shocking stuff. Call the authorities. What makes me laugh is how impossible that idea seemed to certain people not long ago. Back then, leaving royal life was treated like jumping off a cliff. The predictions were dramatic. The headlines were dramatic. The commentary was dramatic. You would have thought Harry had announced he was moving to Mars and starting a potato farm. Now, fast forward. They seem happy. They seem settled. They're raising Archie and Lilibet away from the constant spotlight. And suddenly, some of the same people who predicted doom are quietly clearing their throats and saying, well, perhaps there's another way to look at this. You don't say. The thing regular people understand immediately is this. Success isn't always staying where everybody expects you to stay. Sometimes success is leaving. Sometimes success is protecting your peace. Sometimes success is walking away from a situation that no longer works for you. Most people have done some version of that in their own lives. Maybe it was a job, maybe it was a city, maybe it was a relationship, maybe it was a family dynamic that left you exhausted every day. You leave because you want something healthier, not because you're weak, not because you're running away, because you're running towards something better. That's what makes all of this feel so relatable. Strip away the titles, strip away the castles, strip away the royal drama, and what do you have? A husband and wife trying to build a life on their own terms. That's a story millions of people understand. And honestly, I think that's why the narrative is getting harder to maintain, because reality keeps showing up. The prediction said failure, reality says they're still standing. The prediction said regret, reality says they appear pretty comfortable. The prediction said they disappear, reality says people still can't stop talking about them. That's got to be frustrating for some folks. Imagine spending years waiting for someone's downfall, only to watch them keep moving forward. That's enough to ruin a perfectly good afternoon. And here's the biggest thing. The conversation is changing. Less focus on whether Harry and Meghan can survive outside the royal system. More focus on whether the system itself needs to evolve. That's a completely different discussion. And it explains why some commentators suddenly sound very different than they did 5 years ago. Because once reality refuses to cooperate with the old storyline, eventually the storyline has to change. Not everybody will admit it. Not everybody will like it. But people can see what's right in front of them. Harry and Meghan made a choice. A lot of people said it would destroy them. Years later, they're still building their lives, raising their children, and doing things their own way. And whether you love them or hate them, one thing is becoming harder and harder to deny. Maybe they knew exactly what they were doing all along. You know what's really interesting about this whole Harry and Meghan conversation? A lot of people are finally realizing that success isn't one size fits all. Because for years, the rulebook seemed pretty simple. Stay in the system, follow the script, smile for the cameras, show up where you're told, collect approval from the right people, and congratulations, you've officially succeeded. That was the formula. Or at least that's what everybody kept saying. Then Harry and Meghan came along and basically said, yeah, we're going to try something else. And let me tell you, people lost their minds. The predictions started flying around like confetti. They'll fail. They'll disappear. They'll regret it. They'll come back begging. At one point, some commentators were predicting Harry and Meghan's downfall with the confidence of people announcing tomorrow's weather forecast. The problem? Reality refused to cooperate. Years later, Harry and Meghan are still standing. That's got to be awkward. Imagine spending years waiting for someone to crash, and instead watching them build a life they actually seem happy with. That's like showing up to watch a disaster movie and accidentally ending up at a family barbecue. The thing that connects with ordinary people is actually pretty simple. Most of us have had that moment in life. That moment where everybody around you says, stay where you are, but your gut says, nah, I need something different. Maybe it's leaving a job, maybe it's moving cities, maybe it's starting a business, maybe it's walking away from a situation that looks great on paper but drains every ounce of joy out of your life. People understand that, because sometimes the safest choice isn't the happiest choice, and sometimes the happiest choice looks completely crazy to everyone else. That's why all those predictions about regret never really landed for me. Harry doesn't look like somebody counting the days until he can go backward. Meghan doesn't look like somebody desperately trying to reverse course. They look like two people focused on their family, their projects, and their own path. Whether people agree with every decision they've made is a separate conversation, but the idea that they were supposed to spend years miserable because critics predicted it, that part hasn't exactly worked out. And now you're seeing more journalists quietly acknowledge something that would have been almost forbidden territory a few years ago. Maybe leaving wasn't the mistake. Maybe staying would have been. Now that's a conversation. Because suddenly we're not talking about whether Harry and Meghan survived. They clearly did. We're talking about whether the old definition of success was too small in the first place. And honestly, that's a question regular people ask every day. Who gets to decide what success looks like? Your boss? Your family? The newspapers? Random strangers on social media with anime profile pictures? Or you? Because at the end of the day, plenty of people have fancy titles, impressive resumes, and public approval while being absolutely miserable. And plenty of people have none of those things and sleep like babies at night. That's real life. That's why this story keeps resonating with people. Strip away the royal titles, forget the palaces, forget the headlines. At its core, it's about two people who decided they wanted a different life and took a huge risk to get it. Everyone told them they were making a mistake. Years later, they're still moving forward. They're raising Archie and Lilibet, they're doing things their own way. And the people who guaranteed failure are suddenly having to explain why that failure never showed up. That's got to be one uncomfortable staff meeting. Because whether you love Harry and Meghan or can't stand them, one thing is becoming harder to argue with. Success isn't always becoming what everybody expects you to be. Sometimes it's having the courage to become who you actually are. You know what I saw when I looked at that photo of little Lilibet running barefoot through the grass? A kid. That's it. Not a headline, not a royal talking point, not a public relations strategy. A kid. And honestly, that's what made the picture so refreshing. Because somewhere along the way, people started acting like royal children are supposed to emerge from the womb wearing polished shoes, standing perfectly straight, and waving at imaginary crowds. Meanwhile, every normal parent on earth knows the truth. Kids are messy. Kids are chaotic. Kids treat clean clothes like personal enemies. You spend 20 minutes getting them ready, and 5 minutes later they look like they've been fighting raccoons behind a supermarket. That's childhood. And it's glorious. When I saw Lilibet running through that grass without shoes, I didn't think, oh look, a royal child. I thought, yep, that's exactly what kids do. They kick off their shoes, they run around for no reason, they collect mysterious stains that nobody can identify, they come home covered in dirt and somehow proud of it. That's living. That's growing up. That's making memories. The funny thing is that some people looked at that image and immediately started turning it into some grand debate. Meanwhile, most parents were probably looking at it and saying, please tell me somebody checked for thorns. Because that's how normal people think. The bigger point here isn't about footwear. Nobody's holding international conferences about children's sandals. It's about freedom. It's about letting a child enjoy those little moments that make childhood special. The best childhood memories usually aren't the fancy ones anyway. They're the random ones. Running through the yard, playing in the rain, jumping in puddles and then after being told not to, climbing things you definitely shouldn't be climbing, then pretending you weren't climbing them when an adult shows up. We've all been there. What makes this image resonate with so many people is that it feels real. Not staged, not overly polished, not designed to look perfect. Just a child enjoying life. And honestly, good for Harry and Meghan if that's the environment they're creating for Archie and Lilibet. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm your host, Miles. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and share it with your friends, your family, your neighbor's cat, basically anyone who enjoys a little common sense mixed with a little royal drama. And hey, if you're feeling a little extra generous today and you'd like to help support the channel, you can always send a super thanks. Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I already know this one is going to be a lively discussion. Stay safe, stay happy, and remember, sometimes the biggest royal scandal of the week is just a child playing in the grass. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.